Hey, I'm Ariam, and this is my vlog of reading the Mage Winds series by Mercedes LeKay. Now, I need you to know, the Mage Winds series is a series that follows the Arrows of the Queen series and a book called By the Sword. Obviously both by Mercedes LeKay as well. I am going to be saying spoilers for those series. I will not be saying spoilers for the Mage Winds series, but I will be saying them for Hours of the Queen and By the Sword. So, and I'm not going to explain what the series is about because I assume if you're okay with the spoilers, that you already know what it's about, or I don't know. It's not like anybody watches this anyways, which is good. That's what I want. Um, anyways, so I am 21% into this now, and the thing is, I read this before. I DNF'd it because I was not old enough for it. I was like 14, and this is adult. This is upper YA, new adult stuff. I wasn't ready for it at 14, and I DNF'd it, and I am so glad I did and that I got back to it because I am understanding a lot more now, like the fact that I am reading this as an adult, I am understanding it better. Now, this follows 2 points of view. We're following Elspeth so far she's still in Valdemar, still in the Palace Complex, the Collegium Complex, and we're following Darkwind, who is in a failing Vale, which is obviously a big problem. I am very much enjoying Elspeth's points of view more. There's more happening in them. So I'm just finding it a lot more interesting. Like Darkwind's points of view, it's a lot of him thinking about the politics that are going on in the Vale, and how he can't figure out how to fix anything about it. And I'm just finding it a lot less interesting. Like it is important backstory, but honestly, there are also places there where it's also info dumpy. So far I'm enjoying Elspeth's parts a lot more. And I love Elspeth in this book. She is such a fun character to follow because she's kind of reckless. And she's not reckless in a suicidal way. She's reckless in young and reckless way. But the thing is, she was also taught to think about politics and because she's supposed to be the queen one day, right? So she was also taught to think about politics and stuff and analyze stuff. So she has that ability while still being reckless, which is kind of an interesting thing to see because she'll analyze something and then she'll be like, great, so I'll do it. Okay, it is March 19th. I am 48% of the way through the book. So there are two things, excuse me. There are two things I really want to comment on because there are two characters so far that have not met. And so Darkwind, I'm still kind of like just not really interested in his story. There have been things happening, but it's still a lot of exposition and building up to what's going to happen next. The thing is that I'm 48% of the way through the book, and if this was a book that was only focused on one point of view, this would be 24% of the way through, right? Which is reasonable. So I do feel it's reasonable, especially because we are getting Elspeth's point of view, and I am interested in that. If they were both exposition and building up, in a way, Elspeth is exposition and building up, but because it's a continuation of all these series that came before, whereas Darkwind's isn't, it doesn't feel as much exposition and building up as Darkwind's does. But again, because it's only 24% of the way through for real, even though it's 48% of the way through, just because they're both half and half, then it's still exposition and building up. However, about Elspeth, the thing that I don't want to say, but it's true, and I have felt this about her character in all the books I've read about her, is that she doesn't have a character. So Elspeth starts out as a brat, right? And she is basically super spoiled, and she's taught to be and she's taught to be um, arrogant and demanding and spoiled. And then Talia comes in and takes her under her wing and teaches her not to be those things. But basically, every time we see Elspeth up to this book, really, we always see her um, as a plot point for Talia. Like, we see her being the brat, then we see her growing up a little, then we see her as a teenager who is very connected to Talia, hero worshipping Talia. We see her in those stages as a plot point for Talia. We don't see her until now really on her own. And because of that, I've always felt that she was basically just a blank slate character. Like, there's no real connection between her as the brat to her as the hero worshiper to her now. And I do see that Mercedes Lackey is trying to put in some personality traits like a quick temper to connect them, but it doesn't really feel connected to me because of that. And because of that, I feel like I don't like her character as much. And like, I'm wondering now if I had just started from this book and I hadn't known Elsa's from before, what would I think of her? Like, what would I think her character is? I would think that she is very determined. She is impetuous and a little reckless. Well, actually, she's not impetuous, but she is very reckless and a little impetuous. That's what it should be. She's not impetuous and a little reckless. She's very reckless and a tiny bit impetuous. Well, more than a tiny bit, but she's a little impetuous, yes. Um, I would say that she also is someone who likes to have fun and she likes to feel and she definitely likes to feel that she's in control of her own life, which I think everyone likes to feel that they're in control of their own life, but Elspeth has not really had a chance to have fun or be in control of her own life. And it's not that we don't, which comparing her with Talia, it's not that Talia doesn't like to have fun. Talia does like to have fun. However, Talia's idea of fun is more acceptable in the society that she's in, first of all. Secondly, she is just a herald. Even though she's the monarch's own, she is just a herald, whereas Elspeth is the princess and she is going to be treated differently because of that. She's not going to be treated like just a herald. And so, yeah, Elspeth hasn't really had a chance to have fun simply because partially because she's a princess and also because her ideas of fun are much less socially acceptable in the society that she's in and the role that she is in. So I think she is an interesting character in this book. I'm just being bothered by the fact that I've had her as a blank slate from prior books. Now, what just happened is very interesting as well. And by interesting, I mean frustrating. And it's frustrating as a reader because I know what the companions are. Excuse me. Spam call. Anyways, so the companions are fallible. However, okay, actually, I do think this is bad writing. Funnily enough, after ages of Elspeth saying, I feel like I'm in a book where someone's directing my steps, the part where she decides to go off and not feel like someone's directing her steps does feel like she's in a book. It doesn't feel, not because it doesn't necessarily feel true to her character, also it doesn't, because earlier we had her, like, I don't know, maybe I need to read a little more to figure out if it seems true to her character or not. Like, there's, like, I could make arguments for it is true to her character, but I could also make arguments for it's not true to her character. But it just, and maybe it's partially because Elsa was talking about how much, yeah, but it just feels like Elspeth is a person who thinks so much about stuff, and if the plot let her think a little bit, she wouldn't go off like this. And so it feels like, oh, okay, we're doing this for the plot. We're not doing this because this fits Elspeth's character. doesn't even necessarily fit Gwenna's character, though Gwen is her companion, though there are some machinations going on there that, you know, Gwenna might be doing some machinations that involve her not telling Elspeth stuff, which does fit Gwenna. But yeah, it just, the plot wants Elspeth to go and meet Darkwind, so this is how we're going to go meet Darkwind. And I wish that we're not doing that. So it is March 21st, and yesterday I got to 58% of the book. I do not remember what I said in the last update. So let's go check on that before I continue. You know what? I actually didn't feel like watching all that, but from what I did see, there was more an update on the Elspeth parts rather than the Darkwind's parts, and my update right now is more on the Darkwind parts, because I finally feel like we're starting to move, and I think I might have said that in the last one too, but I do finally feel that we're starting to move away from exposition and into getting, and we're finally starting the plot for Darkwind. And I explained, and the same thing is true for Elspeth, but I explained why it was a little different in feeling for me, and how I would just, in the last update. I think that's gonna be all for this update. Okay, listen, it's not even 6 o'clock in the morning yet, but 23rd of March, and I got yesterday to 71% of Winds of Fate, and we need to talk about it because I am mad. And essentially, what I'm liking about the stories have switched. Darkwind's point of view is interesting, and Elspeth's part of view, that's the point of view I'm mad at, because they changed my boy Skiff. They changed my boy Skiff. He is not the same person I recognize. The Skiff I know is reckless. He supports woman. He is willing to go along on schemes and adventures. This is not the Skiff I know. And one little measly crush would not change Skip into being a totally different person. I'm guessing that the reason that they wrote him this way is that Elspeth will have reason to like Darkwind more when she meets him, because he's not being sexist like Skip is. But oh my god, I'm so mad. Like, I really want to finish this arc finally, you know? Like, I want to, like, I started with this arc reading when I first read Arrows of the Queen, or at the very least when I read Arrows Fall so many years ago, but really Arrows of the Queen, and I want to finish this arc. I want to see what actually happens, but they're doing my boy Skiff dirty, and I am very mad about it. Okay, so we're 86% of the way into this book, and Elspeth and Darkwind have finally met, which means that the plot is finally getting somewhere. And while this book was divided into 2 points of views, I do not think that it should have taken this long to get to the plot. Now let's go back to talking about Skiff, because I am still annoyed. I honestly was so close to DNFing this book, and then I went back to the Darkwind point of view. I was like, okay, fine, I'm really enjoying this. But Skiff. Another reason, maybe one of the reasons it took so long for this book to set up is because it was like fitting according to the time, which makes sense. I really like that, and so I will forgive it for messing up, because we have Darkwind doing nothing whilst Elspeth does a lot, and suddenly Elspeth is doing a lot, is doing nothing, while Darkwind is doing a lot. But back to Skiff, I am still so annoyed about it. This is just like, why even send Skiff if, like, obviously you want this character to act a certain way. Why even send Skiff? Give us a few scenes of Elspeth interacting in the beginning of the book. Give us a few scenes of Elspeth in the beginning of the book interacting with a herald that we've never met before, and then send that herald with her. This is not Skiff. You've totally changed his character. Elspeth is also... I'm wondering a bit about her temper. Like, if I'm okay with it or not. But for the situation she's in, it makes sense. She's just a bit like, she is still very unregulated in a way that makes it feel like all these times that they've told us, oh, the brat is totally gone, and then we see her and she is so many times still so unregulated, like she's unable to emotionally self-regulate, that I'm questioning it because of what they told us, and so like I said, I was really enjoying the Darkwind point of view. It's actually no longer sticking to just Elspeth or just Darkwind's point of view. We're also seeing some other people that have to do with the plot. We also had 2 interludes, which I will not tell you exactly what they were, but I'm actually liking that. It's actually closer to Mercedes LeKay's usual writing, where she'll just show us everything, and I think Mercedes LeKay does better. While I generally prefer third point, I don't know. There are authors that do better with third person close, and there are authors that do better with third person far, whatever you call it. And I think Mercedes LeKay does better with far. So I'm glad we went back to that. Hey, it is March 31st, but I actually finished this on March 24th. And the reason I didn't update, well, one of the reasons I didn't update is because I didn't really feel like my feelings had changed. This book is definitely, it does have the big battle at the end and all that, but it's the first book in a series, and it is definitely setting up for the next books in the series. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I am sure this is a reread actually right now, because I saw on Goodreads that I'd rated this book and the next book, and I rated this one actually pretty highly, like 4 stars, but whatever. I think you can tell I don't think it's a 4-star book now, but back when I read this in 2014, and then I rated the last book very lowly, and I'm pretty sure, so that's the one that I DNF'd. So that is great. I don't remember a lot of this book. So, I mean, I read it in 2014 and I didn't really understand it. But yeah, I finished this book. Great. Hey, it's the morning of April 5th, and I am 8% of the way through Winds of Change by Mercedes LeKay. So I'm just going to update you in this and end the vlog here because it is Sunday. So I'm just going to go and say that this is week 1 from Wednesday to Saturday. So Winds of Change is the second in the series, and I forgot to say, I was thinking about it before I started it, and I realized that this series is probably would be considered, if it were published nowadays and not in the 90s, it would probably be considered romantasy. Anyways, so this is Winds of Change, which is technically the second in trilogy, but it's also this trilogy is a series that follows quite a few other series. But so I can't really say much here, and I have a vlog going on about it, so maybe I'll update more exactly what's happening there. But so far, this is a reread for me, but I don't remember a lot of it, and so far I'm enjoying this quite a lot more than the first book. The first book took a really, really long time to get going, and now we're finally starting, but that's a lie. That's a lie. You know what? This book, for some reason, is repeating a lot of things that happened in the first book that we already saw happen in the first book, and actually word for word, and I've just been skipping them, which is probably why it feels faster for me, but that's not good writing, so I am enjoying it because I'm skipping those parts, but actually judging the book, that's not good writing. Good morning. It is April 6th, and I will introduce Aurelium later because I'm exhausted. No, I'll introduce it now. I'm Ariam, and this is my week 2 vlog of Aurelium. So if you don't know, Aurelium is a readathon where your character picks a magical career in a university. in Magical University, and they learn it. And every class that that your character studies is a prompt for you. And I'm currently reading Winds of Change by Mercedes Lakay, which I started last week, and this is the second week vlog. And it is for my character Radha, because I have 3 characters, of course. You're supposed to have one, who is studying to be a Feywild's cartographer. And this class is astronomy. The class focus is galactic outskirts, and she is specifically studying the prompt. She's specifically studying galactic outskirts, but the prompt was top of your shelf, which could also include top of your TBR, which is what I chose for this, which is Winds of Change, because I read Winds of Fate last month. Now, the thing about Winds of Change is it's got a lot of, besides being the second trilogy, the trilogy also follows on other books, so I can't really tell you much. And the other reason I can't tell you much is that, honestly, I'm very tired. I got to 38% last night, which is good, but I didn't update you then because I was tired, and I feel like I don't really know what to update you now, especially because I'm not continuing this vlog. So I just want to tell you that in the last vlog, I said that I was enjoying it, but I complained that one of the reasons that I'm enjoying it is I'm skipping all the parts where she repeats stuff. And that is still from the last book that we literally just read in the last book. And that is still true. But I'm still enjoying it a lot more than the first book, because more is happening, and we're getting training montages, and I love training montages. So far, we've had 2 training montages, and, well, we actually had multiple training montages, but with 2 different people. So I absolutely love training montages, so I am having the time of my life. And it's less crisis. It's more like, this is what's happening. It's obviously going to prepare for a crisis, but I prefer when it's just mostly slice of life, especially Mercedes Lakay's writing, I think. So that's where I am right now. Okay, I don't know why I've been avoiding filming this video. There's absolutely no reason for me to have been avoiding filming this. But I'm 60% of the way into Winds of Change, and I am just so ambivalent about it, because, like, on one hand, I'm enjoying it, and I think about it, I'm like, oh, I'm having such a fun time reading this. But I repeat, I am skipping the parts that are just retelling the same thing they said in the last book. More than that, I've also been sometimes like, I cannot read this anymore, I have to put it down. So that's really on me, because it's mostly the romance. But I do want to talk about the romance. So we have 2 stuff. We have, like, a minor romance between Tripolan and another character who I cannot say because of spoilers, but it's like soulmate romance, and that was really the part where I had to put it down, because, like, no, we've never even seen you 2 interact before, and now you're telling me you're soulmates. The other one, and usually Mercedes Lakay's the soulmate's much better. The other one is between Elspeth and Darkwind, which I knew was coming. And the thing is, it's actually technically enemies to lover, which I usually like. So why don't I like this? It's not compelling me. Why is it not compelling me? And I really think it's because the thing that compels me in enemies to lovers, and I think a lot of people is their interactions. But the thing is, they're too polite for it to really be enemies to lovers. Like, they'll be thinking, oh, he's so arrogant, she's so arrogant, she's so impatient, he doesn't explain anything well. But then they'll actually interact, and they'll be like, and they know how to behave, right? So they'll just interact normally, and that's not fun. And now we've gotten to the romance part, and honestly, I don't see it. All of the romance really between Darkwind and Elspeth is built on sexual attraction, and we've only got, the reason that they're all thinking about it is because they have had enough conversations that they understand each other. Like, and again, it's not compelling because it's literally talking about they're telling each other, oh, this is why I do this. This is why I do this. Oh, I can change this for you. And, like, yes, that's what you want in real life, but that's not what I want to read in a book, you know? That's not compelling to me. And how many times am I going to use the word compelling? And now they're like, oh, I'm sexually attracted to you. Let's do something about that. And it's like, when I read a romance, what I want to see is, I want to see the 2 characters getting to know each other. And we haven't really seen them getting to know each other. All we've seen is, like, oh, they don't hate each other anymore. But it's really literally just based on sexual attraction right now. Besides that, another thing that annoys me is there's this character named Gwenna, and she's keeping a lot of secrets, which is fine. However, I am at the point where there are some things that I don't know if she was keeping a secret and she decided to reveal it, or if it's an editing error. And that's bad writing. So basically, these books are not well written. That's all I want to say. And at the same time, the parts that are not these parts, the parts that have the plot in them and doing the magic and the training montages. I love the training montages, as I've said. And Mercedes Lachey does training montages so well. The training montages. Oh, that reminds me. Another thing I wanted to complain about in this book. Oh my god, so many complaints. But another thing I wanted to complain about in this book was, there's this one character that appeared in last book, and now she's appearing in this book, Nyara. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. Let's say Nyara, because she's half a cat, and so it's like Nyan Cat, Nyara. So Nyara, in the first book, she was okay. She didn't have that much of a role, but we were getting to know her character. And suddenly in this book, I really feel like her character has been abandoned whenever Mercedes Lachey wants to make one of her points about how people should act. And so she's having she has Nyara act a certain way, and then Nyara now has a mentor, so she has her mentor correct her, but it's like, not all these things are things that I would think that Nyara would do based on what we know about her character. Like, it just seems out of character. But, yeah, I'm actually really enjoying the parts where we see Elspeth and Darkwind actually doing plot stuff. Well, I don't feel like standing up, and my cat is where I put my computer when I film in front of the bookcases, so I'm not going to be sleeping very soundly. Well, one of my cats. The other cat is sleeping on the laundry, of course. But it is April 11th, so the end of week 2, and I have quite a few updates for you. So the first update, not in chronological order, is I finished Wuthering Heights last night. I finished my reread of Wuthering Heights. Now, listen, the ending was so much shorter and quicker than I remembered. And there's a scene that I was like, I really remembered that just did not appear in here. So I don't know what that was about. And I like the ending I had in my head better than what happened here, just because it was slower. But I still really, really, really love this book. This is such a good book. Okay. Then, actually, on Friday, I finished. My water's empty. Anyways, taking the last few sips, I finished Winds of Change. And I just want to talk about something about Winds of Change, and that is that I was very frustrated by some scenes that had nothing to do with the book itself. Basically, this book downloaded on my Kindle without page numbers. Sometimes books do that. I do not know why, but sometimes there are certain books that don't have page numbers on Kindle. And so this is a book that is much longer than what I usually read. I usually read between the 300 to 380 pages. This was 475 pages. So I kept on looking at the percent count, which is all I had to tell me how far I was into the book because it was on a Kindle and had no page numbers, and kept on being like, okay, so I only have 15% left, but it doesn't make sense to only have 15% left because of where the book is right now. And that is all to say that the book's pacing was actually good for the page count, but I was just totally frustrated because I was expecting something different because of the amount of percentage I had. And that is just so frustrating because obviously it impacted my enjoyment of the book, and it has nothing to do with the book. So that is frustrating. Other than that, I know I'm pretty sure I updated you last when I was 65% of the way in, but I don't really feel like I have much to add. I do think this was a better book than the previous one, and I'm really wondering where the next book will go, or if maybe I was just the main reason I DNF'd it when I was 14 was because of the amount of sex scenes. Now, listen, there weren't that many sex scenes in this book, and I totally found them all possible just to skip past. So I don't know if the next book is going to have a ton of sex scenes, but it doesn't make sense that it will have a ton of sex scenes because of where, like specifically sex scenes that I remember, because of where it's leading, where this book is leading to, or if what this book is leading to doesn't happen in the third book. But anyways, this book itself, I saw it was better than the first book, better paced, obviously. It was not all lead up, and I really enjoyed the plot at the end. However, this series as a whole has, this book, I mentioned the romance annoyed me, and this series as a whole has some things that annoy me. One is the amount of, what do you call them? The God want stuff. You know, when something comes in to save our characters and the hand of God, you know, but that's not what it's called. Yeah, it's what, ex machina, whatever it's called. It really is happening a lot in this series. And yeah, I don't like it. I'd like the parts where characters actually do stuff, but then like the Deus Ex Machina comes, I'm like, okay, fine, I guess. I don't always hate a Deus Ex Machina, but it's happened so much in the series that I'm beginning to hate it. The other thing that is not only in this series, is in a lot of Mercedes Lakay's books, where she just assumes that if two people have the ability to be attracted to each other, like if they're two straight people and it's a man and a woman, or if it's two gay people and it's a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, they will be. Which I guess it's her experience. Very odd, because I know that that's not most people's experience, says. But let's move on. So I do want to say some things before we move on, and that is, basically, I said I was reading Wuthering Heights for alchemy for chemical reiteration for a reread. However, I decided not to do that. Radha has another class, shapeshifting, which the course focus is volume modification, and the prompt for that was to flip a coin. If you get heads, read a book beneath 400 pages. If you get tails, read a book over 400 pages. So I got tails, and it's kind of a different book, but then I realized that this book is over 400 pages, and there was another book that I actually really wanted to reread. So I moved this to fit in for shapeshifting, and then I reread Spellbinders in Suspense, which is actually an anthology by Alfred Hitchcock, like edited by Alfred Hitchcock, obviously, which is crazy because it's so hard to read. Like anthologies, collections I can reread. Anthologies I generally won't reread, but, and look, there are some not as good stories in here. Man from the South, Black Magic, Treasure Trove, but there are so many good stories in here. First of all, it has The Birds by Daphne du Maurier, has Puzzle for Poppy by Patrick Quentin, which is another name for, I believe, for Q Patrick, and I just love that story, absolutely. Oh, there are so many good stories in here, and so I actually reread an anthology. Then, Miriam has animal studies, and what is the course focus for that? Something to do with wolves. Let's look that up. Hey, it is July 2nd, and I finally started reading Winds of Fury. I am 15% of the way through, and oh boy. I think the first thing we have to start off with is that there's a ton of like, not even info dumping, it's not actually info dumping, but we're just like information that's like, oh yeah, and this happened back in Valdemar, that Elspeth wasn't aware of, and this happened back in Valdemar, that Elspeth wasn't aware of, or that, like, that we didn't see happen because Elspeth was dealing with the stuff that she was dealing with in the Vales, and that like, and apparently in between the gap from the last book and this book, when I got the information, because by the way, we have not gotten to Valdemar yet. They're planning to go there, but I'm not sure when they're going to go there. Apparently this book is 427 pages, which I believe is longer than most of the first books, but I also know but they're planning another stop before they actually get to Valdemar, and I do know that there's a trilogy that immediately follows this trilogy that I believe Elspeth is also the main character, so I don't even know if they're going to get to Valdemar in this book, and it's really, really frustrating me. Like, you told us in the last book what the plan was, and now, like, you've broken it. Like you set me up for something, and now you've taken that away. And maybe this would frustrate me less if I didn't already know stuff about Valdemar and be curious to see what's going on there. But it is frustrating. Also, there's this thing that happened that I'm not going to say because it's a spoiler, but it just feels like such a Deus Ex Machina in a way that's like stupid and annoying. Like, honestly, believe me, I actually like Deus Ex Machina sometimes, but this one, oh my god, no, it's so annoying. And I think that's also adding to my frustration of they're not going to Valdemar, because one of the ways they could resolve this of like how and why did this thing happen is by going to Valdemar and figuring it out. However, I do think the writing itself is better. Like, I think we're not being told as much feelings and rather shown them. There is still a bit of hitting us over the head with, look how good Yara and Skip are together. Never mind that she's like half a cat. So, but overall, I do think the writing is better. And there was something very interesting that happened in the beginning of the book. I'm not sure, it makes me nervous in like the way of like, there could be like a lot of explicit rape in Paige. So far there has not been, which I'm very glad for, but it could lead to that. So, and then I don't know how I would deal with that, whether I would be able to skip those scenes or I don't want to DNF the book, but if I had to, I would have to. Hi, hello, it's July 6th, and I'm 56% of the way through Winds of Fury, and I don't know how to feel about this. But first of all, there are two things that I want to complain about. The Deus Ex Machina, specifically in this book, which I believe I've already mentioned, and in this series, and in this book in general, and in specifically in the series, the limits on mind speech, which is basically telepathy, speaking mind to mind, okay, and mind reading. And the thing is that the series that come before this, it was very much set up that these things, the gods aren't really active, and that this mind speech stuff has limits. And in this series, and in this book especially, it's basically just like there are only limits when Mercedes LeKay wants them to be. And otherwise, it's just a free for all. And it's so frustrating. Like, it's so frustrating. And on the other hand, there are still parts in this book I'm enjoying it. And at the same time, I feel like this book is just so long. Like, it feels like it's longer than it should be. I don't even know how, because of the Deus Ex Machina. So, like, why does it feel longer than it should be? But it still feels like, I'll tell you how. It's because the plot isn't, the pacing is off, okay? The fact is they're gonna have to fight and defeat this evil guy and his army and his, and his kingdom. And we're 56% of the way through, and we're only just getting started on planning that. So the pacing is off. Honestly, I would have DNF'd this book earlier if it weren't for the fact that I want to get to the next book in the series. Well, the series that follows this series. I want to read the first book in that one. But right now, I'm actually kind of more enjoying it. Like, I just complained a ton, but I am actually more enjoying it at this point than I was earlier. However, it's not it's still 2.5 stars. Yeah, today is Tuesday, July 14th, and I actually finished Winds of Fate last week on Wednesday. But the reason I didn't update you till now is because I woke up without a voice, and I have not really fully gained it back until now. So, yeah. Now, I think my really main complaint about this third book in the series is just there's this one character, which I cannot say anything about who he is because that would spoil stuff. And I just don't like him. He is very passive, and while there are good reasons for him being passive, it does seem like everything just comes to him. He doesn't have to work for anything. This is very ironic because a lot of his parts is also lectures about how you have to work for stuff, which is also annoying me. I don't like being educated in my books, you know? Like, I don't want to hear about lectures about how you have to work for stuff and you can't just expect everything to come to you. So he really annoyed me. So I really don't know how I feel about this book overall. Maybe like I would give it a 2.5 rating if I gave ratings, because while there were parts I enjoyed and parts I was like reading really fast and really wanted to be in them reading, and even to the point where I was like wanting to pick up the book. This was not a book where I didn't want to pick it up. However, the other parts were just such a big detriment to this book, along with everything else I've mentioned, that I didn't like it. And I do know that this character is in the next series that follows the series, and I read the first one in this, and I remember really, really liking it. And I don't remember anything about him, so I don't know if I just blocked that part out, like I didn't enjoy those chapters, and I enjoyed the other characters. I love the other character. I absolutely remember loving the other character. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. About the series as a whole, this is definitely the weakest of any series or any part of a series I've ever read by Mercedes Lackey. The only thing that I can think of that I've read by her that is weaker than this is one of the books, not the latest release in the Elemental Masters series, but the one before that. That one really was very weak for me, to the point where I DNF'd it. But even other books of her that I DNF'd have not been as weak as the series has for me. I'm sorry to leave us on such like a bummer note, but I just don't think the series was very good. And what's more, no, actually, I was gonna say I think the quality got worse as it went along, but I don't think that's true. The third book was definitely the worst. However, I think the second book was the best out of all of them.